Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a deep dive into 19th century Japan with this story, and wow, it is packed with suspense. You sent over some really incredible source material about this young man named Manjiro returning home after being stranded abroad for years.
And it's a homecoming, yeah, you can say that again. It's a homecoming fraught with tension, that's for sure. We're talking cultural clash, political intrigue, and the psychological weight of essentially living between two worlds.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. Manjiro and his fellow fishermen are finally reaching Japan's shores after all these years away. Emerging from the shadows, they're met by figures. I don't know about you, but I think that feeling of uncertainty would be so overwhelming for me.
Absolutely. And you have to remember the context of all of this. This is Edo period Japan. It was a time of very, very strict isolationist policies. Returning after contact with foreigners, I mean, that immediately made you a suspect.
So it's no wonder then that one of the fishermen, his name is Goemon, his first reaction, at least according to the source material, is to grab a weapon. Talk about coming home to a tense welcome.
Oh yeah, his fear is totally understandable. Can you imagine being cut off from everything you know, only to return and find your home completely different? I mean, it's enough to make anyone reach for a weapon, right?
Right. But Manjiro, he reacts a bit differently. He's clearly learned to read between the lines during his time away. Instead of weapons, he sees that the figures are carrying sweet potatoes.
It's such a simple detail, but it's so significant. In a society that is so wary of outsiders, this offering of food, it speaks volumes. You know, it's a gesture of hospitality. It's a beacon of hope. It's this reminder that even with all this fear, even in the face of fear, I guess you could say, basic human kindness can still emerge.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that cultural misunderstandings don't, automatically erase empathy. However, the plot thickens because the source material then mentions officials, and they arrive on the scene, and their demeanor is, well, it's far from welcoming.
And there it is. That sense of unease that we felt, it just ratcheted up a notch. This is where the true danger lies. The kindness of villagers, that's one thing. But the government's suspicion, that's a whole other beast entirely.
And, even though Manjiro seems composed on the surface, you can really sense the weight of the situation. Like,
Yeah.
it's crushing down on him. There's this incredibly vivid description of him clutching this tattered tanuki. It's a type of claws from his past.
Yeah, it's more than just a piece of cloth, though. It's symbolic, think about it. A tanuki is often given as a gift, a token of good wishes and such. But his is tattered, it's worn. It's almost like it represents his own spirit after years of hardship, and now he's facing this uncertain homecoming.
That's a really powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like he's clinging to a piece of his past as he faces this uncertain future. And as if the tension wasn't already thick enough, they're immediately accused of being spies.
Which, in the context of Japan's isolationist policies during this period, isn't that surprising? I mean, remember, they feared not just military invasion, but like the contamination of their culture by outside influences.
That fear of change, it feels strangely familiar even today.
Yeah.
But to be branded a spy in your own country after everything they endured, that's a homecoming I wouldn't wish on anyone.
You're right. It really highlights the anxieties of the time, To the shogunate, anyone who was exposed to foreign influence was a threat.
Yeah.
A potential vector for dangerous ideas.
Right.
And it makes you think about how those anxieties, they still play out today, just on a global scale.
The fascinating parallel.
Yeah.
What struck me is that Manjiro, despite this really harsh accusation, he advises his companions to just comply. Do you think that's a sign of defeat, or is it more strategic given what we know about him?
That's where Manjiro's experiences really come into play here. I see it as a calculated move, a survival tactic that he's honed over years of navigating a totally, totally different world.
Right.
He's learned that sometimes you achieve more by working within the system than by fighting it head on.
It's that adaptability that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Reading the room, recognizing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it highlights a really crucial skill for anyone who's navigating different cultures, even today.
Right.
It's not about abandoning your own identity,
Yeah.
but understanding when to adapt, when to push forward, and when to just patiently navigate the complexities of a new situation.
And this situation is certainly complex.
Yeah,
Even the environment seems to mirror their plight.
it does.
The source material really emphasizes the rain, The mud, the encroaching darkness, it's...
It's like nature itself is conspiring to make their homecoming even more dreadful.
Yeah,
And, the author uses those details to create this incredibly immersive experience, wouldn't you say?
absolutely. It sets the stage for a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
As the chapter closes,
Mm-hmm.
Manjiro and his friends are basically left at the mercy of these officials.
Yeah,
What a cliffhanger.
I know.
Knowing what you do about this period, what are some of the potential outcomes here?
Well, the source material hints at a range of possibilities, some far more grim than others.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, imprisonment, even execution.
Wow.
Remember, Japan had a very strict policy of isolation, and they weren't afraid to enforce it.
Those are incredibly high stakes.
Yeah,
But the material also suggests that Manjiro's cooperative attitude, his willingness to adapt, might actually play in his favor.
precisely. That's where his knowledge of the outside world, which initially seemed so threatening to the officials, could actually become his saving grace.
Okay.
He could be seen as this bridge between cultures, a valuable asset instead of a danger.
That's quite a turn.
Right.
What starts as this homecoming fraught with suspicion could actually become an opportunity for Manjiro to kind of forge this new path, not just for himself, but potentially for his nation. It speaks to the power of perspective, of how perceived threats can really transform into opportunities with the right approach. It makes you wonder, if you were in Manjiro's shoes, and facing a homecoming so different from what you might have imagined, how would you even begin to bridge that gap? I mean, between the life you once knew and the person you've become after so long.
It's a question that resonates even today, don't you think? We all experience change. Sometimes it's dramatic change, change that kind of forces us to reconcile different versions of ourselves. Manjiro's story, it just takes it to a whole other level, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And, while most of us, thankfully, won't face accusations of espionage when we step off the plane, there's still a really powerful lesson here, about embracing adaptability without losing sight of who you are at your core.
Precisely. It's this delicate dance, holding onto your values while you're navigating a new reality. In Manjiro's story, it reminds us that sometimes the greatest strength, it lies in our ability to adapt and to find the opportunity, even in the face of fear and uncertainty.
This whole deep dive has been quite the journey. It's incredible how one story, one tiny moment in time, can offer so much insight into, human nature, cultural clashes, and even the power of resilience.
It really makes you think about how we approach the unknown, both individually and as a society as a whole.
Yeah.
Do we retreat into fear, or do we try to find ways to bridge the gap?
Those are some questions worth pondering, for sure.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this really fascinating chapter of history. It's given us all a lot to think about.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to all of our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Manjiro's world. We'll be back next time with another fascinating journey into the heart of knowledge. Until then, keep exploring.